Start the recording now. It is my pleasure of introducing Chris Schmitt. He is a graduate of West Point. He enlisted as a private in the Army as an infantryman in 1986, then went on to a 30-year military career in Special Forces as a Green Beret and retired as a lieutenant colonel. He served our country in Afghanistan, the Sahara, the Balkans, and other hot, dry, dusty places. Today, he's the founder of Azimuth Consulting Group, an executive coaching leadership consulting firm here in North Bend, serving some of the leading Fortune 100 companies and international nonprofits. He continues to support veterans through Team Red, White, and Blue and Bunker Labs as a volunteer. An avid outdoorsman, Chris enjoys hiking, biking, skiing, and kayaking through the Pacific Northwest, especially here in the Cascade Mountains of Washington State. So it is my pleasure to introduce Chris Schmitt, founder of Azimuth Consulting Group.
Thanks, Rob. This is exciting, especially since, this is something that you have been talking to me about for about 2 or 3 years. So it's really exciting that the Snow Valley Innovation Center is really getting some legs and has an international audience today.
It's so true. So today's topic is about where challenges present new opportunities. And somebody that has had as a diverse background as you. The rest of us, it's like we've been on autopilot and we take a lot for granted. You've had incredible experiences, things that some of us would never attempt to do or think to do, but you have. And I'm so excited to hear more about your story today. And we've spent a little bit of time this last week, and it's simply amazing. So everybody that gets the opportunity to listen in, this is going to be a true treat. So let's start off. Azimuth. For those of us without a military background, what does azimuth mean?
Well, an azimuth is a direction on a compass. But probably more important is that azimuth is in the vernacular in the military, where one of my commanders may come up to me and say, hey, sir, can I get an azimuth check on that? And what they're really asking is about, hey, can I understand your vision? Can I see where we're going? Ultimately, when you shoot a direction on a compass for a certain amount of distance, if you're only off by a couple degrees, you'll end up in a place that you didn't intend. And the analogy that brings to business is, if you just kind of stray for some of those values, or, oh, hey, we'll just overlook this or that, suddenly you end up in a place that you didn't intend. And I really find that with my coaching practice, with my consulting company, if I can help leaders stick to their azimuth, stick to their best self, stick to their organization's best self, they can summit epic objectives. They can do extraordinary things, and that's really cool. It's really cool to transition from a career that really felt that I was doing something that mattered to a career that I really feel like I'm doing something that matters. And that's neat. Rob, you're muted. Voila.
So that became the name of your consulting business, Azimuth Consulting Group. So let's now go back a few years. Let's go back to West Point. What was the vetting process like? As a young kid growing up and deciding, okay, I'm going off to West Point. How did all that happen?
Well, for starters, and this is kind of the theme of today, I think. For starters, I I like the idea of West Point. Duty on Our Country resonated with 17-year-old Chris Schmitt in Howards Grove, Wisconsin. But as I applied to the academy, I didn't have the academic acumen, prowess, skills, probably to be successful there. Unfortunately, I wasn't accepted, and not being accepted, that was a little twist for kid that was captain of the football team, and was a leader, and all that kind of stuff. But the bottom line is, not getting accepted meant that I needed to pivot, and like you said, I enlisted as a private. I studied the SAT a bunch in order to get my scores higher, and then ultimately a couple of years later, I was accepted as I went through the prep school, and joined the class of '92 at the academy. So just getting the academy was part of that pivot, or that, staying consistent, being incremental, just working hard. And so none of that is an epiphany. None of that is miraculous insight. It's just getting base hits and being consistent, doing the right thing, incrementing, and then being, asking what's the vetting process of the academy. I mean, I think ultimately, for Vance, and even Scott, who are academy grads, at school, you can immediately disparage and say, "Oh, woe is me," or you can, say, I can do this. I just need to put one foot in front of the other.
Sounds like it was a good dose of just perseverance, resiliency.
Well,
So,
I mean, anybody that's having their own company, I mean, it's just in the valley here. I mean, the resilience necessary for trail youth to stay on track. Luke at Compass, think about the resilience that's necessary there for the big pivots that he's put on. In Volish and Prosky, just here in North Bend, there's a ton of examples of where that resilience pays off.
well, okay, so you're in West Point, and there's always going to be experiences coming up that you bring forward to today, and things that you recall. What was the thing that was probably most poignant that you experienced as a young cadet that you use today in life? That experience, you use that experience today in life.
Well, it would be fun to hear, some other people's, experience, whether it's at the academy or with the military, that are on this call, when they're in that initial kind of space. The military aspect of my time at West Point, that was easy. That was fun. I was named the top cadet of my freshman class, and I got to carry the flag back into the academy grounds for some of the summer training that we were doing. And it was funny because the commandant told me, put his kind of hand on me and told me, you're going to be great. You need to stick with it. Just continue to do great things. And I said, sir, just wait till the academic year. We'll see if, I'm still around. And the academics were my big place where I had to prove myself. And ultimately, I remember a time my sophomore year where I'm getting my butt kicked in physics and differential equations and biology, and I went for extra help with the biology instructor, and he was a retired colonel. He had served with Delta Force at Desert One, and so he was definitely somebody that I respected. And his bit of advice was, it's all just part of the process. You know, the point is that staying consistent, staying persistent, doing the work, running through the process will make it a lot easier for you in the future, that in the rain, under a poncho, you can put together a plan that not only achieves the objective, but thinks about all the contingencies that takes care of your team. And I think that really resonated with me, the idea that you know, it's not necessarily you know, the material that I learned in biology, or the formulas or functions of calculus or physics that were important. It was really that stick-to-itiveness, that perseverance, that willingness to increment and stick through the process, and that's paid off dividends, not only in my military career, but also with my company.
Okay. Well, you've had experiences where you've been in a swamp before.
Right? Who wouldn't? Come on, Rob. We've all been in our own swamps, so, right?
Yeah.
And that's the idea across the board, I think, is that we're all in the swamp right now. We're in a pandemic. You've heard, right? We're like, this is tough times. And to be able just to say, okay, I've been here before. Don't let the obstacle overcome you. What are the things that I need to do to keep moving forward and get to the other side? And, you know, the swamp is a great analogy, because in Ranger School, you know, you're spending a bunch of time in Florida phase in the swamp. And when you're chest deep, you can go, oh my goodness, like I'm going to die here. This is horrible. But you can also, you know, reach over to your buddy and get the assurance that I'm okay, you're okay, I'm okay. And lean on your buddy, because your Ranger buddies is a big deal. Lean on your buddy, and know that if you put one foot in front of another, you will get to the other side.
Yeah. So one of the programs that you lead is called the Traverse. For those that were on the call earlier before we started, you got to see a glimpse of the Traverse. It's an outdoor leadership experience. And you've had those kind of personal experiences. You've soloed through the Olympic National Forest on more than a week on your own. But what are some of the things that you experience younger in life that you find are valuable today, and getting out of the wilderness like this with management leaders? What are some of the things that you do in the Traverse that kind of you can't do in an office environment?
Well, I think that it just becomes a great analogy to that video we played earlier, the putting one foot in front of the other. You know, getting in a place, you know, if you think about an entire mountain or the entire Traverse, it can be too big. If you think about how we're going to get through fiscal 2021, it might be too big. But if you just take today, Scott Morley, one of my advisors on the last Traverse, you know, said that if you look at the elephant, it's too big to eat in one bite. But if you take little bites, you can eat the elephant. And that's the idea of the Traverse, is this idea around perspective, action, and commitment. And we take not only neuroscience insights that I gained from working with Columbia University, or those combat experiences from Afghanistan, Africa, and Iraq, and other those hot, dry, dusty places. You kind of put them all together, and you recognize that it's all of it can be. The mountains can provide that outdoor learning experience. It can be an analogy for the difficult things that you're doing. The great thing about the Traverse is that the executives that go on, I get to unplug because there's no cell phone coverage in the center of the Tobacco Root Mountains in Montana, and so really for 4 days you're unplugged. When's the last time you've been unplugged for 2 days, Rob?
A long time.
Right? Yeah. I mean, and it's hard. It's hard. Our world just requires us to pick up your phone and check it again. I mean, so it becomes a blessing to go and be in that space. And once you get in that space, there's research that says that, you crest past 36 hours of not looking at that phone and being inundated of information. Now there's greater possibilities. And that's the idea, is that with those greater possibilities, now we can start having conversations about greater action commitments that you want for your business or your life. That if we're just sitting in a boardroom and having that conversation, those possibilities just aren't there.
So it helps people to really focus and reprioritize, and leadership teamwork is probably another prevalent piece to it.
The neat thing about the Traverse is afterwards, next Thursday, this past year's cohort we're going to bring everybody together on Zoom. I've heard the conversation. Well, I've had folks that have been on the experience that a week later they're walking through the grocery store and they're looking over the aisle for the rest of the team, and then they go, "Oh, I'm no longer," like it becomes a for those of us in the military, we get that experience. For others that never had that experience, that great bond of a tribe is a super powerful thing.
So speaking of tribes, beyond just your practice, your management consulting practice, you do a lot of volunteer work with two groups. One is Team Red, White, and Blue, and the other one is Bunker Labs. And what do you get back out of your volunteers? What volunteerism? What are you finding that is kind of the thing that helps drive you to want to help others?
Well, I guess, for starters, I think that working with Team RWB and Bunker Labs is a lot about me as well. Like, the need for connection with tribe is important. The reminder that people are important, that in the case of RWB, working out and getting enough sleep, like, that's the foundation. If you're blowing that off, that's quite possibly the start of the downward spiral. So, RWB's message is that work out, get enough sleep, and all the rest of it comes together. And the reminder that, all right, I need to take care of myself. I've been here before, no matter what the situation is. I've been in the swamp before. I can do this. I just need to embrace the suck. It's no big deal. Um, and then I can move forward. So RWB becomes about, making sure that you provide the venue to allow other veterans to go for a hike, go snowshoeing, do all those cool things that we can do here in North Bend, just outside our front door, to be able to help lead those sort of things because I have that expertise. And then Bunker Labs just becomes another place to meet up with your tribe, bounce ideas, have support. It's the idea of the Snow Valley Innovation Center, right? It's that place to rally around, so that you're not in the swamp by yourself, thinking that I'm going to die here. Once you have your ability to lean on your buddy, suddenly it's all better. And I think that servant leadership, is about others, but it's also about yourself. To your bringing Jody on with that thought. The fun thing about working with young Lieutenant Lupo is that you give a bit of advice, but you're also, by mentoring, you're doing something for yourself as well. And not that I'm saying that it needs to be about you, but servant leadership, it goes both ways, and serving others serves yourself. There's a lot of research on how helping and serving others is better for you, not only psychologically but physically as well.
How much of this is mental?
Well, I'm gonna engage you in that. So, how much of being at work today was physical and how much of it was mental, and showing up and doing this podcast, Rob?
Yeah. Sometimes mental. Do you think sometimes mental is underrated because we're just trying to get through the day?
We physically can do way, way, way more than we think we can. That's the idea of the traverse. That's the idea of those long treks. It's the thing that I continually learn is, by putting one foot in front of the other, which is an easy physical task, we can get a lot further. The real challenge is mentally, stepping up and moving out, and saying that I can. Because as you endure, it isn't always really just about physically doing it. It's about mentally believing that you can do it. I think. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I'm a work in progress. And I think that, it's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day stuff. It's hard to do the strategic things that we need to do, to keep moving forward. And you've worked with a lot of executives, and I'm sure that you've seen certain things that are kind of commonalities where people get stuck. Can you think of something that's just thing that you see over and over again that would be good advice for any of us that get stuck?
This past week, I had actually, I think, well, it was not yesterday, but on Monday, I had a coaching conversation that the idea of Eisenhower's matrix, Eisenhower's four square, was an idea of urgent and important. And those urgent, important things, they dominate our to-do list. But Eisenhower would encourage um, others, and actually would coach his staff when he was president to say, the place that I really want to work is in the important, not urgent. If it's important, urgent, first of all, I want to really ask the question if it's really that important. So it is those strategic things that fall in the not urgent but important category. And then there's a whole bunch of not important, not urgent that maybe we perceive that we should do or have to do or just find ourselves doing, that we end up sucking up our time, that we don't have the space to do the important but not urgent. And then we just try to crush those things that are our urgent important list. As leaders, if it's in the urgent important list, it might be delegatable. If it's in the urgent important list, it might. Napoleon would wait several days to open his mail to see if he had a courier deliver it to him. If it would, the deal was it was held for several days just to make sure that it was really, really that important for him to deal with. A number of great leaders through time have had different mechanisms in place to ensure that what they're being required to do is actually that important. And that's a really interesting lens to put on things, is to not just apply effort all the time on everything that comes across your desk. It's laid in front of you. It's to do some thinking to ensure that hey, this is really something that's important. This is really something that I could do something about. Now it's actually something that I should act on. And I think that's key, because otherwise there's so much information that comes at us on a regular basis that we could be spending a ton of energy on things that we can't do anything about.
Well done. So, Chris, I want to thank you, first of all, for your time today, talking about where challenges present new opportunities. And you talked about a number of things, takeaways that for me are important. Strategic planning, and it comes from determining what's urgent and what's important and what are things that you need to do anyway. They may not be the top of the list. It's that mental readiness. If you were to leave your cell phone behind and go out with Chris in the wilderness, you'd be forced to reprioritize what's important. And it comes down to just doing the hard work. And Chris, thank you so much for sharing. We're going to end the recording and we're going to open up for Q&A for a few minutes. I know that Tanya from Trail Youth actually has something that is on her mind.